So Paul's question is, who drops out of the race next and when? So let me just, I think Doug Burgum drops out of the race when they don't let him come to the next debate.
Maybe, although I still think he'll buy his way in.
I mean, look, if you're okay, so then the question is, if not, I mean, Paul's question is who drops out of the race next and when. I think the obvious answer, and I agree with you, the guy can spend enough money, can keep spending money to buy himself 1% more in a national poll. But who beyond that? I don't see anyone else.
Of the people on the stage, except for maybe Burgum, just decides he's sick of spending his kid's inheritance. The one person, ironically, who I think is the most likely to get out before Iowa is Ron DeSantis, because I think he may not have any money left. His super PAC might have money, but I think he may get to November and not be able to afford to fly his state troopers around on private planes and have to drop out and try to salvage his career. I don't think I was going to say
you saw he had a big loss at the state party the other day in terms of the rules governing how this, which was a big win for President Trump going into this. So I say that because you're right. I mean, at some point, does he save his Florida career and say, I'm still the governor?
Exactly.
That's and use the excuse of I've got to deal with, all of these issues in Florida. Jennifer.
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think in Florida, he did a great job. He's been doing a great job as governor, other than some transparency issues I have with him of late. But I mean, I think for the most part, he has a stellar record as governor. And I think if he continues, it's an ego thing, right? And I totally agree, Mark. All of the speculation, and I have a bunch of DeSantis friends up here, all the speculation is that he's running out of money. His donors are starting to move. They're looking at other candidates. They've been looking at Nikki a lot. And so I think that DeSantis needs to figure it out soon. Listen, he's got a young family. He has a wife that just went through breast cancer. He could use any excuse in the world,
exactly,
family excuse or being governor in his career, to get out of this thing.
Exactly. And look, he's traveling a ton to raise money. It's a huge suck on his time. And but I'm hearing about the events that they're not very big. There's no indication his grassroots fundraising is very good. As for the question for the others, Vivek, time of his life, raising enough money to keep going, doesn't have a big infrastructure. Nikki Haley, lean operation, more fundraising coming in. Tim Scott, maybe Tim Scott could get out. I guess I'd say it's possible Tim Scott could get out, but he's got a big super PAC as well. And again, kind of enjoying it and not working all that hard at it, actually. So it's not a huge tax on his daily life compared to a normal campaign. Pence, this is it. Last go round. Again, doesn't need a lot of money to run. Christie, counting on New Hampshire. So I think, and no one, here's the thing. If DeSantis was at 32 and Trump was at 48 or 45, people in the party would pressure these other folks to get out. You can't go to Nikki Haley or Tim Scott now and say, hey, for the good of the party, get out so we can consolidate around X, because there is no X.
Right.
So
Jeff,
how do you get him out?
Jeff,
question from Jeff.
My question is, it just struck me as ironic and a contradiction that you have 7 candidates on the stage. One of the themes is law and order, yet you have a front runner who's under 91 indictments and has been found liable of sexual assault. Having a question like that in that event struck me as quite ironic, and no one seemed to react to it.
Jeff, before my colleagues react, I want your honest view. Is this Zoom more interesting than the debate or not?
Absolutely.
All right, just making sure. Jennifer, what do you think of that notion of that's a vulnerability that really neither the moderators nor the candidates really went after?
I think that it's a really good question, Jeff. And that's something that, it's the elephant in the room, right? It's the big orange elephant in the room. Why aren't we talking about that? If we're the party of law and order, why aren't we talking about all of Donald Trump's indictments? Why aren't we talking about the comments that he's made? Why don't we talk about the attack on democracy? And that's not happening. And again, it's almost like everyone's giving Donald Trump a free pass because he's not there on stage. And then they just end up fighting. But I agree, it should have come out.
And even Chris Christie is not really drilling that. He's talking about other aspects of Trump, right?
Yeah, look, I think that there's, to Jeff's question, why? Well, first of all, the law and order thing, we talked about this on yesterday's call in terms of what issues we thought would come up. I believe crime is in light of Target closing all these stores and some of the viral videos that we've seen of people looting and smashing windows. There is a sense among Republican voters, and we see it all the time now in these videos, in these newscasts, about what's happening on the streets, Democrats defunding the police, et cetera. And I think for a lot of voters, they bifurcate the crime, the defund the police, what we're seeing in the cities, and an attack on Trump, which a lot of voters view as a weaponization of the judicial system. And
exactly,
right or wrong, I mean, this is what Jeff's asking, I think, is they don't, and the candidates know this. I mean, there's a reason Chris Christie and these guys are willing to go to the line and say Trump should be here and defend his record, but they get that. What, 60% of the Republican base right now believes that the judicial system is weaponized against Donald Trump, and the reason they're going after him is to prevent him from winning. And So everybody is getting that. And I think the moderators got it. They didn't want to get backlash for this, especially at Fox. I think the candidates understand where that balance is. And frankly, I think the voters have literally bifurcated this issue of crime.
Jeff, that's the answer. The voters don't want it, and they're not suicidal. But you got to assume that maybe they should just take a risk, do what's right. They all think it in their heart. Maybe they just take a risk and try to shape public opinion rather than running from it and being captive to it. If there's one more question, I'd love you to tee it up. But I do want to follow up one thing from yesterday. I believe all three of us, me, you, Sean, and Scott Walker, we all predicted topics that would come up. One of you said crime. One of you said immigration. Those were easy. Those were obvious. So I'm declaring myself the winner because I said TikTok. Not as obvious, and that was asked. So I won that. So I'm not sure what it is I win. Do we have another question?
Nice. That you didn't give us any context of the question saying pick a hard issue. You said pick an issue. I picked an issue. But I agree. The thing that I found was interesting, by the way, just to your point, and I'll give you credit for at least picking it up, is I thought it was a good hit. I thought going after Vivek on TikTok and the hypocrisy of it. I mean, I'm sorry. His answer, like I agree with Governor Haley on this. It is a threat to our national security. Republicans have taken the right stand in trying to ban TikTok and protect the country. And yet he used his desire to win as an excuse. I mean, frankly, as a conservative, that's what I've always said about the Democrats, that they will say and do whatever they need to win in pursuit of what they deem the greater good. This was Vivek basically siding with them. And I was actually, I was proud that she brought it up because I do think it's huge, hypocritical response.
It'd be like saying we need to rob banks and buy kids free root beer so they'll vote for us so we can win the election, and then we'll stop robbing banks and we'll.
Right.
I mean, it was just insane. All right, Jennifer, thank you for joining us, and everybody who watched, thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
See you in a month.
All right. Well, thank you for being part of this conversation today. And also for all of you who have been so supportive of the show. I really appreciate it. It does mean a lot to me. When you're doing this form of independent media, this is what it's all based on, right? How many people are subscribing, how much support you have. So thank you, especially if you're on Apple Podcast and YouTube. A lot of times people ask me why. Those are the two big metrics that people look at. Yes, I know some of you watch it on Rumble. I appreciate everyone who's watching on the First. Thank you. It's great to be with you.